I always thought my sister's issues would eventually resolve themselves, that we'd grow closer as adults, maybe even laugh about our childhood drama over coffee someday. But that dream died the moment my mother called me during my final semester of college. My name is Sam, and I was 3 months away from graduating with my business degree when everything fell apart. I was sitting in the campus library, surrounded by marketing textbooks and empty coffee cups, when my phone buzzed. "Honey, we need to talk about your tuition," my mother said, her voice carrying that familiar tension. I groaned, a sense of dread settling in. "There's been a change of plans." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" "Lena needs intensive therapy. The new program we found. It's expensive, but it's supposed to be revolutionary. Your father and I have decided to redirect your college fund to cover it." The fluorescent light suddenly felt too bright. My hands went numb. "Mom, I'm 3 months from graduating. I can't just—" "I know it's not ideal," she cut in, using the same tone she'd used countless times when choosing Lena's needs over mine. "But your sister is in crisis. She tried to hurt herself again last week." Of course she did. Lena's attempts always seemed to coincide with moments when attention shifted away from her, like my high school graduation, when she swallowed 3 Tylenol and called it an overdose, or my college acceptance, when she scratched her arms with her fingernails and claimed it was a cry for help. "I have rent to pay," I said, my voice shaking. "Books, food. I've been counting on that money." "You're so capable, honey. You'll figure something out. Maybe take out some loans. Lena doesn't have your resilience. She needs us." I stared at my marketing project, the words blurring together. 3 years of perfect grades, working part-time jobs, doing everything right, and none of it mattered. Because Lena needed something. And in our family, Lena's needs were always paramount. "When did she try to hurt herself?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Last Thursday." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The day after I told you about my job offer in Chicago." My mother's silence spoke volumes. "Sam, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. We're family. We have to support each other, right?" I whispered. "Family." Then I ended the call and sat there, watching students pass by with their normal lives and normal problems. My phone buzzed again, a text from Lena this time. "Sorry about your tuition. But maybe this means you'll stay closer to home. I miss my big sister." The message was punctuated with heart emojis, as if she were discussing something as trivial as borrowed clothes. I could picture her smug smile, the way she'd bat her eyes at our parents when they inevitably praised her for reaching out to me. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Ethan, my fiancé. "Still on for dinner tonight?" I stared at his message, thinking about how excited he'd been about the Chicago opportunity, about the apartment listings we'd been browsing together, about all our plans that now seemed to be crumbling because my sister couldn't stand the thought of me succeeding. Something shifted inside me then. Maybe it was the casualness of Lena's message. Maybe it was the way my mother had dismissed years of my hard work. Or maybe it was just the accumulated weight of a lifetime spent being second best. Sitting there in that library, surrounded by the remnants of my carefully planned future, I made a decision. I was done being the responsible one, done sacrificing my dreams to feed my sister's endless need for attention, done playing by rules that always seemed to change in Lena's favor. I texted Ethan back. "Actually, can we meet now? There's something I need to talk to you about." It was time to write my own rules. And if my family didn't like them, well, maybe that was their problem to figure out. The mandatory family dinner felt like walking into a minefield. I'd spent the afternoon with Ethan, planning how to handle my sudden financial crisis, but now I had to face my family and pretend everything was normal, as if they hadn't just pulled the rug out from under my entire future. Lena was already holding court at the dinner table when I arrived, regaling our parents with stories about her new therapy group. She wore a carefully curated outfit that made her look younger, more vulnerable, a trick she'd perfected over the years. Harper jumped up to hug me, her voice syrupy sweet. "I was just telling Mom and Dad about Dr. Matthews. He says I'm making real progress." I returned the hug stiffly, catching a whiff of her expensive perfume, probably another gift from our parents. "That's great." My father looked up from his phone, offering a distracted smile. "Sit. Your mother made pot roast." The table was set with a good china, another sign that this was Harper's show. Mom only broke out the fancy plates when she wanted to make everything seem perfect. Normal. "So," my mother said, serving the food, Harper was thinking about taking some community college classes next semester. Isn't that wonderful? I stabbed a potato with more force than necessary. Interesting timing. Harper's eyes flickered to me, a ghost of a smirk playing at her lips. Well, seeing how hard you've worked really inspired me. I want to follow in your footsteps, big sister. Speaking of school, my father interjected. Have you figured out your situation yet, Sam? You mean the situation where you pulled my funding 3 months before graduation? The words came out sharper than I intended. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. Sam, we discussed this. Your sister needs help. I know. I turned to Harper. How did you try it this time? What? To hurt yourself, I said flatly. Mom said you tried again last week. What was it this time? Pills? Scratches? Or did you just threaten it? Sam, my father's voice carried a warning. That's enough. Harper's lower lip trembled right on cue. I can't believe you'd be so cruel. You know how hard this is for me. Hard for you? I laughed, though it felt hollow. What about how hard it is for everyone else? Do you even care that you're destroying my chance to graduate? I didn't ask them to do that, Harper protested, but her eyes gleamed with satisfaction. My mother reached for Harper's hand. Sweetheart, don't get upset. Dr. Matthews said we need to avoid triggers. Of course, I cut in. We wouldn't want to trigger Harper. Heaven forbid she face any consequences for her actions. That's not fair, my father said. Your sister is sick. Is she? Or is she just really good at manipulating everyone? Harper pushed back from the table, tears flowing perfectly down her cheeks. I can't do this. I'm having an anxiety attack. As if on cue, my parents rushed to comfort her. I watched them fuss over her, remembering all the times I had needed support but stayed quiet, because Harper needed attention more. I'm leaving, I announced, standing up. Don't be dramatic, my mother sighed. Sit down and finish your dinner. No. I grabbed my purse. I have to go figure out how to save my future since you've decided Harper's latest crisis is more important. Harper's sobs grew louder. See what you've done, my mother hissed. She was doing so well, and now what? I challenged. Now she'll need more therapy, more attention, more of my tuition money. As I turned to leave, Harper called out, I'm sorry you're hurting, Sam. Maybe you should join my therapy group. We could heal together. I paused at the door, taking in the scene. Harper, the perfect victim surrounded by our concerned parents. My half-eaten dinner growing cold. The familiar tableau of my family's dysfunction. You know what, Harper? Keep the money. Keep all of it. But remember something. I won't always be around for you to use as a stepping stone. I walked out, ignoring my mother's calls to come back. In my car, my phone lit up with a text from Harper. I really am trying to get better. Don't you want me to get better? I deleted the message without responding. For the first time in my life, I didn't care if Harper got better. I just wanted to get free. After the disastrous family dinner, I sought refuge at my grandmother Evelyn's house. She'd always been my safe harbor, the only one who saw through Harper's performances, but when I arrived, I found her sitting at her kitchen table, looking more troubled than I had ever seen her. I was hoping you'd come by, she said, pushing a cup of tea toward me. We need to talk about your sister. My stomach clenched. What did she do? She came to me last week, crying about needing money for some experimental therapy. Said your parents couldn't afford it. Evelyn's hands trembled slightly as she lifted her cup. I gave her $5,000. You what? Grandma, that therapy money was supposed to come from my tuition. I know that now. Her voice hardened. I called Linda yesterday to ask how Harper's new treatment was going. Imagine my surprise when she had no idea what I was talking about. A knock at the door interrupted us. Through the window, I saw Harper standing on the porch, wearing the same vulnerable outfit from dinner. Evelyn's expression turned to steel. Perfect timing, she muttered, moving to answer. Harper breezed in like she owned the place. Grandma, I can explain everything. Oh. She faltered when she saw me. Sam, what are you doing here? Funny. I was about to ask you the same thing. I came to talk to Grandma about the therapy program. Harper's voice wavered perfectly. There's been a misunderstanding. Stop. Evelyn's command cut through the air. "Where's my money, Harper?" Harper hesitated, then dropped her gaze. "I spent it," she admitted, tears already forming. "But it was for something important. I needed a new car." I scoffed. "Or was it for those designer clothes? That perfume that costs more than my textbooks?" Her facade cracked for a moment, revealing something ugly underneath. "You don't understand. Mom and Dad always gave you everything. They gave me everything." I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. "They just took away my entire future for you. Because I need help," Harper wailed, but her eyes remained dry despite her theatrical sobs. "I'm sick, Sam. Why can't you understand that? The only thing wrong with you is that you're a pathological liar," Evelyn said quietly. "I've watched you manipulate this family for years, but stealing from me? That's a new low." Harper's vulnerability morphed into anger. "Fine. Keep your money. I'll tell Mom and Dad how you both attacked me when I came here seeking help. They'll believe me. They always do. Get out." Evelyn's voice was steel. "And don't come back until you're ready to tell the truth." After Harper left, I sat with my grandmother in silence. My phone buzzed with messages from my mother, no doubt already receiving Harper's version of events. "I'm sorry," Evelyn said finally. "I should have seen through her act. Everyone falls for it eventually." I stared into my cold tea. "That's her superpower." "Not anymore." Evelyn reached for her checkbook. "I'm giving you the money for your tuition." "Grandma, no. I can't." "Yes, you can. And you will." She started writing. "I've enabled Harper's behavior by staying quiet all these years. It's time someone in this family stood up for you." My phone buzzed again. A text from Harper. "Hope you're happy. Mom and Dad are furious about how you and Grandma treated me. Good luck explaining yourself." I showed Evelyn the message. She shook her head. "You know what happens to people who constantly cry wolf, Sam?" I looked at her. "Eventually, the wolf really comes, and no one's left to help them." Looking at my grandmother's determined face, I felt something shift inside me. Harper had finally overplayed her hand. She'd gotten greedy, thinking she could manipulate everyone indefinitely. But she'd forgotten one thing. Every con has its expiration date. I took out my phone and started typing. Evidence, dates, incidents, patterns of behavior. Every manipulation, every fake crisis, every stolen opportunity. It was time to show my parents who their perfect daughter really was. "What are you doing?" Evelyn asked. "Writing my own version of the story," I replied. "And this time, I'm not letting Harper edit it." The evidence I'd gathered against Harper sat like a loaded gun in my phone. For 3 days, I debated whether to pull the trigger. Then my mother called with news that made the decision for me. "We're putting the house up for sale," she announced without preamble. "The therapy program Harper needs is in California." I nearly dropped my coffee. "You're moving across the country?" "We all are. Your father found a position there, and I think a fresh start would be good for everyone. Harper is so excited about it." Of course she was, because I had just signed a lease on an apartment near campus, committed to local job interviews, made plans with Ethan. "When were you planning to tell me?" "Well, honey, we assumed you'd want to come with us. Families should stick together." I laughed, a hollow sound that echoed through my empty dorm room. "Right. Like you stuck with me when you took my tuition money?" "That's not fair," my mother said. "Your sister stole $5,000 from Grandma Evelyn," I cut in. "Did she tell you that part?" Silence crackled over the line. Then, finally, my mother spoke. "Harper explained that situation. She was desperate and Evelyn misunderstood." "Stop." My voice shook. "Just stop. I have proof, Mom. Bank statements, text messages. Everything. Harper's been lying to all of us." "Don't." Her voice turned sharp. "Don't you dare try to hurt your sister. She's fragile right now." "Fragile?" I opened my evidence folder. "Let me read you something. Last month, while you thought Harper was at therapy, she was actually—" "I don't want to hear it," my mother snapped, her voice rising to a near shout. "Why can't you just support her? Why do you have to make everything so difficult?" The words hit like a physical blow. 23 years of being the good daughter, of swallowing my needs, of watching Harper manipulate and destroy. And I was the difficult one. "You know what?" I said quietly. "You're right. I am making things difficult. So let me make it really simple. I'm not going to California. I'm not giving up my life for Harper anymore. And if you sell that house, the house I grew up in, the house where Dad promised we'd always have a home, then don't expect me to ever come back. You don't mean that, she whispered. But I heard the uncertainty in her voice. We're family, she tried again. No, Mom, I said, my voice cold. We're Harper's support system. There's a difference. Before she could respond, I hung up. I sat in the growing darkness of my dorm room, my phone buzzing in my lap. A text from Harper. Can't wait to be roomies in Cali, just like when we were kids. Another followed. Though maybe you should stay here. Ethan might get lonely without you. The implied threat in that last message made my blood run cold. I knew Harper's pattern. If she couldn't control someone, she destroyed them. And now, she was setting her sights on Ethan. I called him immediately. We need to talk. In person. I'm at work, he said. Everything okay? No. I looked at Harper's message again. Nothing's okay. An hour later, I sat across from Ethan in his car, parked outside the coffee shop where he worked. I showed him everything. The evidence, the texts, Harper's threat. Jesus, he whispered, scrolling through the messages. Your sister needs serious help. She's getting it in California, I said. I took a deep breath. My parents are selling the house and moving there with her. His head snapped up. What about us? Our plans? They expect me to go with them, to give up everything here and start over where Harper can have a fresh start. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his glove compartment and pulled out a small box. I was going to wait until your graduation, but... He opened it, revealing a simple engagement ring. Maybe we need our own fresh start. I stared at the ring, then at Harper's threatening message, still glowing on my phone. In that moment, I realized I had to make a choice. Keep playing Harper's game and lose everything, or finally start fighting back. I took the ring. Harper wanted a war. Fine, but this time, I wasn't going to be the only casualty. The engagement ring felt heavy on my finger as I walked into my childhood home one last time. My parents were hosting a farewell dinner before their move to California, and I had decided it was time to make my own announcement. Ethan squeezed my hand as we approached the front door. You sure about this? He whispered. I nodded, though my stomach churned. Through the window, I could see Harper helping Mom set the table, playing the perfect daughter. She'd been suspiciously quiet since her threat about Ethan, which only made me more nervous. The moment we stepped inside, Harper's eyes locked onto my ring. Her smile flickered for just a second before spreading wider. Oh my God, are you engaged? Before I could answer, she threw her arms around me in an enthusiastic hug. I'm so happy for you, she whispered in my ear. Then, so only I could hear, she added, though it's a shame you won't get to have the wedding at home since we're selling it and all. My mother's reaction was more subdued. She stared at the ring, then at Ethan as if seeing him for the first time. This is unexpected. Is it? I challenged. We've been together for 3 years. Ethan's voice was steady, but I could hear the tension beneath it. But with the move to California, I'm not going to California, I cut in. I thought I made that clear. My father emerged from his study, drawn by the tension in our voices. What's going on? Sam and Ethan are engaged, Harper announced, her voice dripping with sweetness. Isn't it wonderful? Though the timing seems a bit rushed, almost like a desperate attempt to stay here. It's not desperate, Ethan said firmly. I've been planning this for months. Of course you have, Harper smiled, but her eyes were cold. I just hope Sam isn't using you to avoid her family responsibilities. Responsibilities? I laughed. You mean enabling your lies? Watching you manipulate everyone, giving up my future so you can have another fresh start? Sam, my mother warned, your sister is trying to get better. No, she's not. I pulled out my phone. She's trying to control everyone, and I can prove it. Harper's face darkened. Mom, she's trying to hurt me again. I can feel an attack coming on. Stop it. I slammed my hand on the table, making everyone jump. Just stop. I have evidence of everything. The money you stole from Grandma, the fake therapy sessions, the way you time your episodes whenever something good happens to me. That's enough, my father started, but I was done being silenced. No, it's not enough. You're selling our home. The home where Mom raised us, where Dad taught me to ride a bike, where we had every Christmas because Harper wants attention. You're abandoning everything we built here because she's throwing another tantrum and I'm done pretending it's okay. Harper's facade cracked. You think you're so perfect, don't you? The responsible one, the good daughter, but you're just jealous because Mom and Dad love me more. Love you more? I felt something inside me snap. They don't love you more, Harper. They're terrified of you. Terrified of what you'll do if they don't give you everything you want. Sam, please, my mother begged. You're making things worse. No, Mom, Harper makes things worse. She always has. And now she's threatening Ethan because she can't stand the idea of me being happy without her. The room went silent. My father turned to Harper. What is she talking about? But Harper had already switched to victim mode, tears streaming down her face. I can't believe you'd accuse me of that. I'm your sister. I love you. I just want us to be a family. We're not a family, I said quietly. We're your audience, and I'm done watching the show. I took Ethan's hand and walked toward the door. Behind me, Harper called out, "If you leave now, don't expect to be welcome back." I turned one last time, taking in the scene. My sister's calculated tears, my mother's desperate expression, my father's confusion, the home that had become a stage for Harper's endless drama. Don't worry, I said. I won't be back. But remember this moment, Harper. Remember that you chose this. As we left, I heard Harper start to wail, and my parents rushing to comfort her. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty walking away from her crisis. I felt free. 3 weeks after the confrontation, my parents left for California. I thought I'd feel relieved. Instead, I felt hollow. Empty houses have a way of echoing with memories, and as I helped Grandma Evelyn clean out the last of their belongings, each room felt like a punch to the gut. They didn't even say goodbye, I muttered, folding a forgotten blanket. Just packed up and left. Evelyn squeezed my shoulder, but before she could respond, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Is this Sam Bennett? A woman's professional voice. This is Dr. Reynolds from Mercy Hospital. We have your sister, Harper, here. My blood ran cold. What happened? She was found unconscious in her hotel room. Apparent overdose. Your parents are still in transit to California, and you're listed as her emergency contact. Of course I was. They probably hadn't updated the paperwork yet. Is she... I couldn't finish the question. She's stable, but she's asking for you. She seems quite distressed. I looked at Evelyn, who had heard enough to understand. She nodded grimly. Go. I'll finish here. 20 minutes later, I stood outside Harper's hospital room, watching through the window as she lay there, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen. A nurse approached me. She's been asking for you repeatedly, then she hesitated. You should know. She tried to refuse treatment at first. Said she wanted to make Sam sorry. My hands started shaking. Even now, even here, it was all manipulation. But what if it wasn't? What if this time was real? Harper's eyes found me through the window. She lifted one hand weakly, and for a moment, I saw the little sister who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. I walked in. You came, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I didn't think you would. What happened, Harper? I couldn't do it, she said, her voice cracking. I couldn't leave knowing you hate me. Mom and Dad don't understand me like you do. They never have. Stop it. My voice was harder than I intended. Just stop. Are you really hurt, or is this another performance? Her face changed, just slightly. Why do you always think I'm lying? I could have died. Did you want to die, or did you want me to feel guilty? She didn't answer immediately, which in itself was an answer. I called Mom and Dad, she said instead. They're turning around, coming back. They said you should stay with me until they get here. Of course they were. Of course. Harper had found a way to drag them back, to keep everyone dancing to her tune. No, I said quietly. What? I said no. I'm not staying. I'm not playing this game anymore. Harper's monitor started beeping faster. You're going to leave me alone after I almost died. You didn't almost die, I said calmly. The nurse told me they pumped your stomach. You took just enough pills to seem serious, but not enough to do real damage. You timed it perfectly, didn't you? Right when Mom and Dad were too far away to come back quickly, but not so far that they couldn't turn around. You're cruel, she spat, dropping the vulnerable act. This is why I did it, to show everyone who you really are. I stepped closer to her bed. No, Harper. This shows everyone who you are, and I'm done being your audience. If you leave now, she called after me, I'll tell them everything was your fault, that you pushed me to this. They'll believe me. They always do. I paused at the door. You know what the difference is between us, Harper? I said without turning around. I don't care if they believe you anymore. Walking out of that hospital was the hardest thing I'd ever done. My phone exploded with messages from my parents, from relatives, from family friends, all of them telling me what a terrible sister I was, how Harper needed me, how family should stick together. I turned my phone off. Later that night, curled up in Ethan's arms, I finally let myself cry. Not for Harper, not really, but for the sister I never had, and for the family I needed but never got. You did the right thing, Ethan whispered. Then why does it feel like she won? Because this isn't the end, he said. It's just the beginning. He was right. This was just the beginning. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I should have known Harper wasn't done. 2 days after the hospital incident, I came home from work to find Ethan's car in our driveway, and Harper's new BMW parked behind it. My hands shook as I unlocked the door. The scene inside froze my blood. Harper was perched on our couch wearing a dress I recognized from my own closet. Ethan stood by the window, his face pale, keeping as much distance between them as possible. Oh, hi, sis. Harper's voice dripped honey. I was just telling Ethan how worried I've been about you, about your anger issues. Get out. My voice was surprisingly steady. That's exactly what I mean. Harper turned to Ethan. She's always so hostile. Mom and Dad are terrified she might do something dangerous. That's why they left, you know. It's not because of me. Ethan started to speak, but Harper cut him off, rising from the couch with practiced grace. They told me everything, Ethan. How she's been jealous of me since we were kids. How she twists things to make me look bad. She stepped closer to him. How she's probably using you to hurt them. Stop it, Harper. I'm just trying to protect him, she said smoothly, taking another step closer. He deserves to know what he's getting into, how you'll eventually turn on him, just like you turned on us. I watched her move toward Ethan, recognizing her familiar pattern, the vulnerable pose, the wide eyes, the slight tremor in her voice that made people want to comfort her. Show him, I said quietly. Harper froze. What? Show him the texts. The ones where you threatened him. Show him the bank statements from Grandma's account. Show him the hospital records that prove you timed your overdose perfectly. I don't know what you're talking about, but her mask slipped. Just slightly. Yes, you do. I pulled out my phone. Because I have copies of everything, every manipulation, every lie, every calculated crisis. You're doing it again, she said, but her voice wavered. Twisting things. Making me the villain. No, Harper, you did that yourself. I turned to Ethan. Tell her what happened when she got here. Harper's eyes widened. Ethan cleared his throat. She tried to kiss me. Said we could run away together. That you'd never have to know. That's not... I didn't. Harper's performance crumbled. He's lying, she spat. Just like you taught him to. I recorded it, Ethan said quietly, holding up his phone. All of it. Harper's face twisted, her beauty warping into something sharp and ugly. You think this changes anything? She sneered. Mom and Dad will never believe you. They'll say you manipulated the recording, that you set me up. They'll choose me. They always choose me. I know, I said, and somehow it didn't hurt anymore. But I'm not doing this for them. I'm doing it for me. For you? She laughed, high and brittle. You're nothing without me. You've spent your whole life being my sister. What are you without that? Free. I stepped closer, watching her flinch. And you know what, Harper? I pity you. Because you'll spend your whole life trying to control people, and you'll never understand why they eventually all walk away. They won't walk away, she hissed. I won't let them. Like you didn't let me? I pulled out one final piece of paper, the restraining order I'd filed that morning. Harper snatched it, reading with trembling hands. You can't do this. We're a family. No, Harper, we're not. We never really were. When she lunged at me, it wasn't entirely unexpected, but Ethan was faster, stepping between us. Harper stumbled back, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Get out, I said again. And if you ever come near me or Ethan again, I'll release everything, every recording, every document, every ugly truth. She backed toward the door, tears falling, real ones this time. You'll regret this, she whispered. You need me. No, I said softly. I really don't. After she left, Ethan held me while I shook. Not from fear, not from sadness, but from relief. For the first time in my life, I'd seen Harper clearly, and more importantly, I'd finally seen myself. 6 months after Harper's final performance, I graduated with my business degree. Standing in my cap and gown, I searched the crowd out of habit, still half expecting to see my parents. Instead, I found Ethan and Grandma Evelyn beaming with genuine pride. Your parents called, Evelyn told me later at the celebration dinner. They wanted to know if you'd reconsider coming to California. Harper's apparently doing better. I stirred my coffee, watching the cream create patterns. And what did you tell them? I told them they should have been here today. She reached into her purse, pulling out an envelope. Which is why I want you to have this now instead of waiting. Inside was a letter from her lawyer. I read it twice, my hand shaking. Grandma, this is your inheritance. Yes, she said, but I'm not waiting until I'm gone to help you build your life. She covered my hand with hers. I've watched you fight for yourself this past year. It's time someone fought for you too. The amount was enough. Enough to start the small marketing firm I dreamed about. Enough to break free, completely. Harper will be furious, I said, but the thought didn't hurt like it used to. Harper needs to learn that actions have consequences, Evelyn said firmly, just like your parents need to learn that enabling isn't the same as loving. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Harper saw your graduation photos online. She's upset you didn't invite us. Please call. I deleted it without responding. What was it about then? Evelyn asked. Freedom, I exhaled. From her, from their expectations, from who I thought I had to be. Ethan slid into the booth beside me, grinning. Speaking of freedom, I have news. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? The Chicago firm called. They want both of us. You for marketing, me for development. We can start next month. Something settled in my chest. Not happiness exactly, but peace. What do you think, Grandma? I asked. Should we go? Evelyn sipped her tea, considering. Then she smiled. I think you've spent enough time wondering what other people think you should do. She was right. Later that night, I sat at my desk, looking at the last family photo we'd taken before everything fell apart. Harper stood in the center, of course, with our parents flanking her protectively. I was on the edge, already fading from the frame. My phone lit up with a new email from Harper. Subject, I'm sorry, Sam. I'm sorry for everything, but I miss my big sister. Please come visit. I promise things will be different. For a moment, I felt the old pull, the urge to fix things, to be the good sister, to maintain the peace. But then I looked at the inheritance letter, at the Chicago job offer, at my engagement ring catching the light, and I realized something important. Sometimes the happiest endings don't involve forgiveness. Sometimes they just involve freedom. I opened my laptop and began typing. Harper, I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I hope you heal, grow, and learn to be happy without needing to control everyone around you. But I won't be there to see it. I'm not your audience anymore. I'm not your victim. I'm not your sister. I'm just free. Sam, I hit send, then blocked her email address. On my desk, the family photo stared up at me. I picked it up, considered it one last time, then dropped it in the trash. Tomorrow, Ethan and I would start planning our move to Chicago. Tomorrow, I would begin building my marketing firm with Evelyn's gift. Tomorrow, I would continue becoming the person I was always meant to be. But tonight, I simply sat in the quiet of my freedom and finally, completely, let go. Some might call it revenge that I got everything Harper tried to take from me. But the truth, the best revenge wasn't hurting her. It was healing myself. And that's a victory she can never take away. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that set us free. We're taught that family is everything, that we should forgive no matter what. But the truth is, some people will never change. Some wounds don't heal with apologies. And sometimes, walking away isn't cruel. It's survival. I spent years trying to be the good daughter, the understanding sister, the one who kept the peace. But peace built on silence isn't peace at all. It's a cage. So if you find yourself in a cycle of manipulation, guilt, and endless second chances, ask yourself, are you holding on to family or just the idea of what family should be? You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to walk away. And when you do, you'll realize true freedom isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming your own life. Good luck, and thank you for listening to my story.